we're never really appreciating the moment of it until you
Fuck
actually
no.
see it. Right. And then it gets weirder because some of the things that when you really are into the psychic medium stuff, you are about validating yourself. So sometimes you document a lot of stuff in there, what's going to happen. Well, there were certain things that happened in that vlog that did happen and other things that did not work out that way. But it also gave me the validation of like, hey, I was gifted at that point. I did know what was going
Right.
on for myself.
Yeah.
Um, so it was encouraging to listen to her. And when she started to ask questions, and this is when I had called you, I said, I'm really excited, Johanna. She had all these questions and I had the answers. I'm like, oh, I know what happened. Or like, this. So I decided to pick up the phone and turn the camera around and answer her back.
Hello, my loves. This is Johanna Burkhart. I am a multidimensional channel, teacher, healer, and author. And I am obsessed with all things metaphysical, esoteric, galactic, and of course, the healing journey. And I'm here to share my stories, my wisdom, and my teachings about being human in the illusion that we call reality. Welcome to Cosmic Blonde. Hello, my loves. Today is an exciting day because I'm going to have my very first guest, the one and only Tanya Lea from Harmonia Tarot. Most of you guys know her as my person, but most of you will also know her from Harmonia Tarot. And we're going to talk today about something that her and I both do, which is hold space for ourselves. We hold the freaking camera up and talk to ourselves. And last week, as we do, we were chatting on Marco, and Tanya started telling me this story about what she was doing. And I immediately thought, we have to record a podcast about this. And so that's what we're going to do today. So welcome, Tanya. I'm so happy you're here.
I'm excited to be here. First of all, to just be your guest in this new era called Cosmic Blonde, because we've break down how many times.
I
But
know. I feel bad. We didn't even tell anybody. We were
it's
like,
fine.
we're done.
It's fine. But you know what? This is great because it feels like there's so much room for activities, and it's just got a whole new breath of fresh air, and I'm loving it. And we always said when we wanted to have a discussion or on the cuff kind of thing, this was the show for it. So I'm excited that it's finally coming in fruition. Like this is
Yeah.
it. This is it. And doing the work, the dirty work that you and I have both been doing, and being each other's people, because we're each, that's just what it is, to bounce off those ideas and I don't know, trauma and crap that we go through.
I mean, we could have like some real good reality shows out of our shit. I mean,
We could.
we could have we could have some really good shit. We can make some good money on our shit.
But what I love about us is that even though that we work through things on our own, because we do a lot of our own processing and stuff like that, we do have each other to bounce off one another. And we are so different on how we take things, yet we still do the work. And we may call it something different, or we may say it, but honestly, we're kind of in this parallel of doing a lot of the similar things in just a different way. And that's the part that gets to me exciting, is to see that and to see so many different facets of other people doing that too, because we're not the only ones who do the work,
Right.
obviously. So to see people do it in different ways has always been, I don't know, intriguing, but also encouraging that, everyone can be unique. Doesn't have to always be in one linear fashion, and we know linear just doesn't exist for us, so
not in the slightest, especially anymore, like not even close.
I
Half the
think
days
it's
I
probably
wake
the
up and I'm like,
hardest.
what reality, what timeline am I in right now?
And we talk about timelines a lot, but like if we look back from the past, and to me, I always have to bring it back to tarot when I do readings, because people look at a linear fashion, past, present, and future, and that's how I teach. But when I go beyond that and start talking about multiple timelines and stuff like that, which is the quantum jump, it can be mind-blowing for individuals, right? And then when we go back and look at some of the work that we do, it's like, how do we communicate to those different parts of us?
Right.
It's pretty cool.
That's the cool part, because a lot of people don't. I think we've actually had some people that know us in common, like friends we have in common,
Mm-hmm.
who have actually gone to both of us and said, Tanya's saying this and teaching this, and Johanna, or to you, Johanna's teaching this, like we're competing or we're copying, or I don't know. I've taken it multiple ways, but it's like, no, we've always done similar things. We just call it, like I call it aspects of self. Tanya calls it variants, so we have our own language. Everybody does. And
Yeah.
it's cool though, because her and I do a lot of the similar things and we do them completely different.
Yeah.
And, but that's the point, because the audience that's meant to come to me isn't meant for you, and your audience isn't really necessarily meant for me. I mean, there's going to be some bleed over here and there, but we're all supposed to have our own people, we have our own language, and it speaks to certain people. And so it's really cool because we learn from each other all the time, just in our normal everyday chit chat, At least
And we
I do.
shift. We
Yes.
shift. So the way we shift and we vibrate differently could be that I'm, not in Johanna's reality right now.
Yeah.
Right. And that can happen even with the people that you work with. And then they go, well, that resonates there. But it's to go with those shifts and to just go with the flow of it. And a lot of people resist it, or they'll kind of, go in the level. There's so many
They take it
situations
personal
where,
and get judgmental.
oh yeah. I mean, I was getting, when you were bringing up last week, when we were doing some, parts work, listening to those versions of us, just so you guys have backstory, I have been, keeping personal. Well, I used to write. I was a writer since I was since I was a kid. I had my first journal when I was 7. I still have that diary from my dad. It was had Lucy on it from Charlie Brown, and it said keep out. Nobody kept out. The whole thing was busted open. My family read everything about it. Like, it was a disaster, but my family was always in my business. But I have always kept a diary, and
They still are.
Yeah, they're still all my business. But I have always kept a diary of everything, and to be able to look back has always been a gift. And so when I shifted to doing more vlogging and video diarying, that was where, I always thought it was more about being heard and seen, and, having that moment, and I would reflect and listen back to it. But I never really saw how much of a gift it truly was until last week, when I just happened to be going back through some of those things from like 2018. I started in like 2016, but I landed on one from 2018. And the way that it triggered me was I was wearing a dress, a green dress that I was wearing that today, like not today, but like that day. And I was like, hey, I still have that dress. Thank God I still fit in it. Wow, I look way better back then. It's like 20 pounds lighter, But I was listening to her story and what she had to say at that moment. And I was just fascinated with how much this woman went through and was at in that thing. And I never really appreciate it, because we're never really appreciating the moment of it until you actually see it. Right. And then it gets weirder, because some of the things that, when I vlog and the thing, when you really are into the psychic medium stuff, you are about validating yourself. So sometimes you document a lot of stuff in there, what's going to happen. Well, there were certain things that happened in that vlog that did happen, and other things that did not work out that way. But it also gave me the validation of like, hey, I was gifted at that point. I did know what was going on for myself.
Yeah.
So it was encouraging to listen to her. And when she started to ask questions, and this is when I had called you, I said, I'm really excited, Johanna. She had all these questions and I had the answers. I'm like, oh, I know what happened. Or like, this. So I decided to pick up the phone and turn the camera around and answer her back. And, I was like, I think I'm going to start that series where I'm just going to pick random ones and answer myself back and keep it going, and just keep these variations or variants alive, because they are, in that existence. And I felt so much lighter that day after doing it. And it encouraged me to listen more to not just what I had to say, but what I am actually saying now at that particular moment. I found I was, way more of a cautious individual as to not pointing out to someone, how, like, I don't know how you get, but like when somebody is talking, sometimes you want to just go ahead and give them advice and say like, oh, let me do this, be the fixer and everything. But when you're listening to a video, and, we do this with Marco Polo, we're forced to kind of listen. We can't really intervene. That's why I like it. But I was listening to her and saying, oh, I can't wait to tell her this. But I was waiting for my turn,
Yeah.
but I was also very cautious of some of the things that I said because, I didn't want to put her down. Like, hey, you did do this. She was so excited about a dude who she was traveling miles and miles to be with. And, equivalent to a dumpster fire, the dumpster fire looked better. But, I, at that point was like, well, this is what she went after, and so
That was her. That's what she saw back then.
That's what she saw back then. And I was like, wow, like she's such a big heart. I won't say I'm not necessarily that I don't have a big heart, but I look at things differently now. I mean, I could say, man, you made such a mistake, or, oh my God, that didn't work out. But I was very compassionate with her. I was like, I think it's amazing that you jumped in the car. You were like, I'm going to go for it. Let's just see what happens.
You had so much courage to do that.
I did. So it was a big wake up call to look at that kind of stuff, and it was for other reasons too. I wanted a new start. Who doesn't want a new start when they're going out somewhere? And
I'm so grateful I did not vlog back in the day when I went from California to North Carolina, because I mean, I would be kind to myself now, but there's still videos of me from my, recording, holding space for myself that I can't watch. I'm not in a space to be able to watch it yet.
Oh, yeah.
It's not because I'm not compassionate for her. It's the level of pain, because I mean, you of all people know that in the last 3 years, the amount of aspects that we call them death, but it's going home, right? That part's going home. It's going back to your heart. But aspects of me that have died, that have felt like real deaths, like I was, it's almost like you feel like, I always tell people, it feels almost like you're suicidal in a way, but it's really a part of you that's dying. Those are the videos that are really hard for me, because I see the amount of pain that I was expressing and allowing to come up. And that pain isn't from the person of me, say in 2020, but that is the pain that was just getting to be expressed from when she was 10 or 12, and so watching that back, it hurts, but there's also a level of anger that makes me want to go beat the shit out of the person that hurt me. You know what I mean? Because I get so protective. So there's videos of me that I still can't watch. I have them, but some of them I can't watch, but I answer myself back, and I will sometimes video it, but I just am like, oh, I know the answer to this and I'll hit it. I never really took it to the part of, I'm intentionally talking to her back then. I knew I was talking to myself and that aspect of myself, but the way that you brought it across that day on Marco, and I was like, the way it came out, you probably weren't intending for it to be so eloquently and smooth, but it really came across that way. And I was like, we got to talk about this, because I do that too, but I never really, it wasn't an intentional thing. It was more of, I'm just going to do this. And you were very intentional about it. And I thought that was really awesome.
Yeah. And that's the part where I, because I've been doing with my modality, with mastering the mirror, I use the mirror on those programs. That's something I'm really passionate about. Anyone who knows me knows how much I love Medusa. So Medusa is brought up a lot with mastering the mirror. But those are parts of me that, I always tell people, you are your best friend, and you say the same thing. You're your best friend. The person you're looking at, the person you're talking about, you have to live with yourself. So that's the one you're going to be trying to please. That's the one you're going to be doing that. But, I always told people, give yourself the gift of documenting this so that you have it to look back on. But I never took it that far. I knew I had all of this, stuff that I had. I said, but what is this? What am I doing? But what's kind of cool is I can even take things a little further, because let's say now I answered her back. Let's see if I still have that dress in how many years, but like, it would be really cool to intentionally go back in 5 years and then listen to both versions and say, oh, I got a whole nother story, because I've always been creating fail safes of talking to myself. I mean, my downfall, or always my fear, is suicide. And that's something that no one takes that lightly. Right. No. But I mean, I did a video to talk to myself just in case I did get to that point again, because I knew I would always listen to me. I would take the time to listen, because I listen back to my vlogs. But, even that one is a failsafe. I have never listened to that other than when I went live with it with some people that I showcased it with. It's still out there. I just never, that's something that I didn't want to listen to if I had to, but these, it felt different. It felt like an intention here that you're kind of creating a memorial for yourself. And you can do this too with your parts too, even with writing, answering yourself back in those letters, and creating kind of that legacy for yourself to see those conversations come in place. And it did feel, I did personally feel a shift when that happened. And I'm excited for those who have done this and answered themselves back. If you look at some people who have done this with pictures and stuff, we kind of do it already. Like how people have an old photo and they try to reenact it when they're older.
Yeah. Especially, there's a lot of that on TikTok. They do a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of the same premise, but this time you're having a full on conversation,
right.
with yourself.
It's, I think for me, where it started, and I actually taught this in Solvation and in private mentorship. And it's why I say, like, her and I are always doing similar things. We do it differently. But I found the greatest value first and foremost, because this is hard. The thing that when I first started doing this, I couldn't look at myself I couldn't.
Yeah.
It was hard to make eye contact. And when I was first starting in business, just getting comfortable on camera, I was just going on camera for myself, just so I'm recording this for myself. That's kind of where it started for me. And then I started doing it to talk to myself. But the shift for me started when I started listening to myself back, because something that my guides have always told me is the answers you seek are in the words you speak. So when you're struggling, listen to yourself. Well, if you're not someone who's self-aware or in present a lot of the time, that can be hard to do. But if you record yourself, and then once you're out of the fucking shit energy and you go back and listen, now you're listening from a whole nother timeline. You're listening from a whole nother frequency. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be like, oh my God, I know what the problem is, or I know what the answer is. You know what I mean? And so that's where it started for me. And that was the biggest shift for me, was just listening to myself back, holding space for myself. Because if you don't hold space for yourself, who the fuck else is going to hold space for yourself? Mm-hmm. And then that's why I attribute the fact that you and I have had such a healthy relationship. One, we both have enough unconditional love for each other to be okay with saying, and safe enough to be like, you're fucking triggering me right now. You know what I mean?
Oh, we do. And we do.
and it's okay. Like sometimes we get upset or we get triggered, and we're able to tell each other, but I can't speak for Tanya, but I would not have been able to hold space for her or for you, and to do this without me learning to do that for myself first. Mm-hmm. So like that was a huge thing for me. And then, so the answering back for me would be when I drive, that's my space to where I usually talk to myself and have conversations with all my aspects and my guides and blah, blah, blah. It's like I
love driving. It's like a meditation state.
It's like you're having a staff meeting though. You know what I mean? With everybody.
Yeah.
And so I started turning on my camera when I was driving and just letting it roll. And so that's when I started kind of answering my own questions back, that I had recorded previously. But again, like I said earlier, it wasn't intentional. Like, I'm going to reply to the Johanna that had this question 3 years ago. So when you did that, I was like, that's fucking genius that she was intentional about it. And we should talk about this, because honestly, if people really started to do this, I think the world would be in a much different place if we were able to do that,
And it's also being able to not just hear yourself, but look at you and to see how much you've grown. Because, when we're learning to have a relationship with us, we sometimes don't know our own body language, or how we're reacting, or what faces we're making, or if we're blushing a little bit and everything. And that's how I ended up starting the mirror work, because what was happening is I was doing the mirror work and I was saying, I love you, you're amazing. And I was having those conversations and I was staring at her and I was like, this is so weird.
It is weird.
But when I would talk, to myself and then record it and hear myself in the background, now I could pay attention to my body. because
Yeah.
I was looking at it and going, oh, why did I just, put my eyes to the side like that? What was I thinking on there? Because body language is so important. And this is what you do. And the biggest thing I had, and the reason I'm a good reader, is because we used to we would have to read a room when we didn't feel safe.
Yeah.
It wasn't intuition. It was something that was
Our trauma
instinctual,
trained us.
So I always tell the people, I'm like, I'm good at reading people, but I also was not a child in a very safe place when I was younger. So I learned to do that to survive. That was my survival mechanism. But I wasn't doing enough with that with myself. And I could literally see when I was listening to her, when she wasn't even believing her own bullshit. And I was like, oh, this is tough to watch, because it's like, yeah, like, that's bullshit what you just said, and it's like, all right, we're just gonna, but I had a lot of compassion, and to be able to state that in a way, because to me, she's existing right now in that timeline. So whatever I vibrate back to her, it's going to help her. So if that's going to bring it back to me, then that's awesome. I really feel we can collapse them like that. So
it's important for people to understand who aren't where we are, that, when we talk about there's no linear time, and that version of her is still existing. If everything is happening all at once, every version of us is existing all at once, every reality, every timeline, everything is all in this now moment. So when we understand that energy is still active, like that, there's something that's still going on there. And this is why I always say, and you hear a lot of healers that say this, when you heal yourself, you heal the world, or you heal your whole timeline, your whole lineage, because what happens is you make the solution more available. You've kind of removed the block to that solution, to that healing. And so that version still has to do the work to accept it and put it into place. But you have reached out and bridged it and been like, here, it's right here for you. And you've put that compassion out. And so it's important for people to understand that, like, that we always have that ability. And why it's also important, if anybody's going to be kind, if anyone's going to be compassionate, if anyone's going to have patience, if anyone is going to look at you through unconditional eyes, it motherfucking should be you. It should be us. We should be our own cheerleader. We should be the ones. And I'm so hard on myself. And so it's been a years of practice to not be a bully to myself. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I know. When I first started off, I remember, I still remember this day where I was trying to get ready for work, and I was trying to do my mirror work ahead, and I had everything in there with my Post-it notes of how we're supposed to do this with it. What was it? The 22 days of mirror work with, I can't think of her name right now off the top of my head. But anyway, so I was doing, yes, it was with her. And so I'm like, all right. And so I remember at one point I was rushing. And I was like looking at myself and going, get your shit together. Like, we got 5 minutes left. And after I said it and I was staring at myself, I was like, would I talk to like a 7-year-old version of myself like that? No, like, I am so nasty to myself right now. And I'm telling myself, I said, no wonder why I'm like freaking out, control freak woman, always have to have things perfect and stuff like that, because that's how I always felt. I felt rushed, but I was rushing myself. I was doing that to me. So it's, when you look at that, you're like, holy crap, no wonder why I don't want to do anything. If I'm bullied, if someone starts dictating to me, pointing the finger, I get smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's how I react. I stop doing anything. I shut down. And that was something. And I feel bad and the reason I feel bad is because I don't technically feel like blame is always the way to go with parenting, but the parents did the best that they could with the shoes and things that they had at their time. I'll never be in their shoes.
Right.
But,
or their level of awareness,
or their awareness, or what it is. And, it happened how it is. But, it was really tough with the raising that I had, with being pointed the finger when, they were just trying to get a point across or wanted me to understand. I think that my father's infamous line was, do you follow? Because
Jesus.
Like, I would freak out because I had a completely different way of processing than him. And, he would be saying something to me and he could say it to me 10 times. And I'd be like,
not
because I was done. I was done. Like I
Oh,
was
so you were just shut down.
I was shut down. I was
Yeah.
shut down. And so he'd be like, do you follow? Do you follow? And then he loses patience kind of thing, you know? And this isn't like my dad's a bad dad. It was just that was the energy that I have felt most of it was not being good enough. And my mom kind of did something similar, but in a different way. It was another way of doing it. But you carry that stuff around with you. You know, I can't imagine being, you know, I don't have being a parent as an example for myself because I'm not a parent, but I am an aunt and I see how it affects, you know, what you do and stuff like that. But it's a really completely different responsibility when you are a parent.
Oh,
And
Jesus.
I feel for parents. I do. I feel for them because, you know,
I have so much more compassion for my parents and the amount of trauma that I went through because of being a parent and knowing what kind of trauma I put my own kids through. And what you were saying earlier is a perfect example of why trauma isn't always, you know, most people know that I went through every type of abuse in my childhood. But you don't have to be necessarily abused to be trauma. Trauma happens when you're not getting your needs met for a long enough period of time or when something else is happening. So it's trauma is so multifaceted. But the thing that I've learned over doing and training for trauma work and doing all this work that I've done all these years, the consistent thread is basically the voices that we heard as a child. Those become our own inner parents inside. They become our inner voices. So however we were spoken to, however we were treated as a child most consistently becomes the way that we speak and treat to ourselves. And so we have to basically love that version of ourselves through it and reparent ourselves. It's just a process of unlearning and relearning, which is the unlearning is so exhausting. It's so
it's
exhausting.
it's really tough, especially when you get triggered on, like mine are specific tactics. Like I have you know, a good relationship, friendship going on, and it's almost a tendency of like, it reminds me a lot of my father. So I have to like really sit in that energy going, it's not my dad. It's not my dad. It's not my dad.
Yeah.
But what's so funny is, when somebody says or gives their opinion and gives advice and they're just freely giving it, you know, they're trying to be sincere and nice, but you know, when you're not asking for it or you get it, it gets a lot, right? So like that's how I feel. But the first thing I feel like is I'm not good enough. Why can't I figure this out myself? And it has nothing to do with the person who's sitting there who's like, is she being so weird about this, or like why is she shutting down or being, you know, quiet? It's because right now in this particular moment I am that little girl, 8 years old, who does not feel good enough because she can't understand, she can't follow. And even though you're giving advice doesn't mean I have to take it, because I feel like I have to take it because I feel that person's energy and that person wants me to take it, and I can feel that, you know. So, you know, I didn't have a discernment when I was a child of my energy. And a lot of times what I was doing as a kid was making others feel good because of their energy field.
Right.
Like,
Your
holy
energy shit.
crap.
Let me fix it.
You know, like, all right, I'm just going to do this. So everybody's, you know, going to be calm. So when you look in the mirror, you don't know who the hell you are.
Yeah,
You have
absolutely.
no idea. I mean, I was at 40 years old. I still remember looking, you know, and I had done the mirror work at that point for a good chunk of time, but I still had no clue who I was. No clue who I was. I was like, I don't even know. And I can look at all the different variants of me or versions of me. And you know me, I love to change my hair color, my wardrobe. There's not one stage of me where I'm consistently the same. Never have been. And I realized it was me really pushing to just want to find myself, explore myself, and that I'm allowed to shift and change. I don't have to be
Yeah.
one person. And that was huge for me. I was like, I'm not meant to be one person.
No, and I just did a
I'm
reel
not.
about this the other day. I put a reel up because that's something that my guides had said multiple times, because I was always the one that's like, I gotta find myself. Who am I?
Yeah.
And they're like, you're under no obligation to find yourself. You're
Yeah.
here to create yourself. So if you want to be someone new every day, do it.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're here to do. We're here to create. We're not on a scavenger hunt to find who we're supposed to be. We're on a mission to create who we want to be and who we feel like, because especially if we are, you know, shifting timelines and frequencies multiple times during the day at this point. You're not in this morning. I can wake up and be one person. By the end of the day, I can be someone completely different. And I used to fight against that because I used to think people probably think I'm weird or flaky or can't figure out who I am. And then one day I was like, no, fuck that. I just don't want to be that person anymore. Today I
It's
want to be someone else.
And I don't care what anybody says, everybody shifts anyway. Think of a day shift job. Listen,
Yeah.
you can be wearing a tie and a suit, but as soon as 5 o'clock hits, you know that you're a hoodlum and you're putting on the beanie and you're like, yeah, listen to my music. People do this, they
Yes.
shift intentionally, and it's normal. It's okay. It's healthy to do so. You're allowed to play different parts. You are.
Do you know the first time I ever actually recognized that was when I worked when I was, before I had my insurance agency, when I worked for somebody else in insurance, one of our reps, I always saw her she always wore a pantsuit. I will never forget this. It would be hot as fuck in San Diego. And she'd be in a pantsuit, always a pantsuit, long sleeve, long pants. And then, and I had known her for years. We'd see her at events and business stuff. And one day I'm in Big Lots. And back then they called it pick and save. And I was in there with my kids and I didn't even know she lived in my area. And she was in shorts, like really short shorts and a tank top. Both her legs were completely and both arms were covered in tattoos. She
Oh,
was
that's
fully
why.
sleeved. And when you're in insurance, we have regulations. We have to cover
Yeah.
ourselves up. And so I was like, I saw her and I was like, who are you? Like, oh my God, I loved it. But you would have never known because she was so
Yeah.
put together and professional. So, I mean, we're always in a sense acting, right? Or playing a role even. And we get to uncover these layers and layer it back up. We get to do whatever the fuck we want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's no different with answering yourself back. You're playing another role.
Yes,
You're
absolutely.
just you're doing the same thing. So you have to constantly be in that energy of doing it. I think it's more natural I think people feel, at least if we can bring some solace to them, a little bit more normal, that it should be normalized, because I
Yeah.
do feel a lot of people will be like, not sure what they want to do, or they're trying to, I have what happens a lot with my stuff, especially with tarot, and, because I teach it and stuff, everyone's trying to, especially when they take my workshops, they're trying to find who they are, their niche, if they want to do a channel or whatever it is that they want to do. I support it regardless. But one of the things that always kind of got me, and maybe because I've always treated it differently, is there's really no competition. It's always kind of intrigued of what's out there. You're going to vibe it, and that's your tribe, and then it comes on there. So people get so insecure with that because of the way that they were brought up in society, that you got to compete in that level. Listen, competing's healthy. It 100% is. But to get to the point where you make yourself smaller and you're running to it and fearful that people are taking stuff away from you, you're just attracting that. It's just
Yeah.
bringing that more in. And it's like, there's no need for it, really.
I'm always competing with other versions of who I used to be. That's who
Yeah.
that's my competition. I feel like my strive is to always not be better, because I don't want to put a hierarchy like I'm better now and I was shitty then, but
Yeah.
I want to make better choices. I want to make better decisions. I want to be from a place of wisdom, and my wisdom is
Mm-hmm.
I've been through this shit. I should know better. So
Yeah.
I'm always trying to compete with myself in that sense,
Mm-hmm.
because there is I'm with you. I don't feel like there's any competition with anybody in the world, because how could there be? Not even identical twins are not exactly they're not
Mm-hmm.
exactly the same person. So nobody is you. So we're all unique, we're all special, and that doesn't come from a place of superiority or hierarchy. It comes from the fucking truth that we're all unique, and that's it. Like, how could
You
you compete with somebody who's not fucking you?
You know what's so funny? I used to say that a lot all the time. We're all unique. And now I'm not so sure we're that unique. I really do feel like we're in a hive, and that there's very little stories. And that's why so many people resonate to stuff, because it's really simple. And we try to make something so big and separate ourselves from something when we're really not separate at all. And so it's just been really blowing when you had said that, because it's like, I feel like I used to be like that too. Like, we're all unique. I'm like, yeah, it is, but then we're not. because we
Well,
have a lot of the same stuff that it's kind of like, but I think when we're talking about specifically external stuff, it's
yeah.
uniqueness.
Well,
Um,
we are in the quantum universe, and
yeah,
when we talk about quantum, quantum is all it mean. Quantum literally means all inclusive, but at the
yeah,
same time, it's never one or the other. It's always both. So
yeah,
we all are unique in the way that we express our information, the way that
hmm
we see our information, see the world.
yeah,
But a lot of us are on the same resonant field, going
hmm
through the same thing in a little bit different way. So it's
hmm
exactly what you just said. It's fucking both.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
unique and yet we're all the same.
Yeah, it's the laws of polarity. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
And it's been coming out so much as of late, for me. And even, when you trust yourself, that's a learning thing too. You have to learn to trust yourself. And
I think
it
that's a
takes practice.
lifelong lesson.
It is. It's going to take practice, and you're just going to know yourself a little bit better each day.
Yeah.
And you're going to listen to your intuition a little bit different each day.
Yeah.
Right? We just have these lessons, and when I used to beat myself up when I go, oh my God, it was so right there in front of me. I knew it. I knew it.
Yeah,
And
but
then
we're
I didn't do it.
attached.
We
And
get
when we're
we get attached. We're in the
attached,
story.
yeah, I always when I teach it, I always say when you're in the cup, you can't you're fucking in the cup. But when you're outside of the cup, you can see all around the cup, you can see down into the cup, you can see the up from the bottom of the cup. And so when you're in it, you're fucking in it, dude. You have to let yourself be in it. And then when you get out of it, now you can be like, okay, now let me look at it again. And so it's what happens. Some people call it blinders or whatever, but when you're in it, you're in it. You just don't have that omniscient view. You don't have the helicopter view. You don't see all sides of it until you allow yourself to move through the energy. And that's why so many of us in this industry say there's no way, you have to go through it. You have to go
Mhm.
through it. And once you get through it, you're going to see what you need to see, but we have to allow ourselves to go through our process. And that's why you getting on video, me getting on video, to our own selves, and then sometimes to each other, it allows us the space to go through it. Because there's times when I've been an emotional wreck on Marco, right? There's been times when I've been,
The infamous delete.
I was going to say, it's real bad when I delete it.
I
Because here's the thing.
don't even get to hear it.
For
Just
me,
deletes.
it was never about Tanya hearing it. It was that me saying it to someone I felt. So here's my process on that. I don't even know if I've ever told you this, but when I delete a Marco, it's because I felt the need, instead of picking up the phone and recording to myself, I needed something to ground me. And
Mhm.
by speaking in your energy as if I'm speaking to you because you're a safe person for me, it grounded me. And so
Mhm.
I heard exactly what I needed to hear when I spoke it. And I didn't feel the need for you to even hear it. So I'll delete it. But that's how she usually knows something's really going on because I will delete a Marco. But it brings me back to another point, which is, and Tanya and I are pretty good at this. We'll say we don't need advice. Like if we're saying something, we'll be like, I don't need advice. And that's
Mhm.
our cue to don't give fucking advice. She just wants to be heard. Because
That's
most of the time we just need to, people don't, 90% of the time, people don't want advice. They just
no.
want to be seen and heard. They literally
Mhm.
just want to be seen and heard.
And that's, I used to try to explain myself. I think my biggest lesson was my best friend Tanya. Like she used to say I was such a poor listener, and I took that so much in like defensive energy, like I was so angry about that. And I wouldn't be an interviewer or go down the stage if I didn't get to know people and listen to them, because I truly took that to heart. I went out and listened and everything. And I remember she had said to me when I was, probably teenagers or something like that. And we had at one point had a big blowout, as most teenagers do when we weren't talking to each other. We had different set of friends. But I remember she had said to me, she goes, I always regretted saying that you didn't listen to me. And I said, and I said, why? And I said, because I was like, you were right. I wasn't listening to you. I was, venting or, wanting to tell my side of the story and not letting you just tell your side of the story. And she had said, I was a great listener, but what I was terrible at listening was to me, not listening, not taking the time to listen to me. And I never quite understood that. Of course, she's gone now, but I it's always stuck with me. And I think that's what really led me to the mirror work was that I'm not taking the time to listen to myself, that, some of these conversations, it's great to bounce it off to a safe person who you find safe, but why aren't you having some of these conversations or questions with yourself, and to have someone tell me that at like freaking 17, this is how knowledgeable she was kind of like,
Do you think that played a part in you vlogging, or was that so far afterwards?
It was so far after. I didn't get into vlogging. I mean, I was behind the scenes most of my life.
Right.
So I did everything: backstage, producing, directing.
She's even been, who you were a photographer for?
Well, I used to do some photography for Comic Cons, like Wizard World and stuff like that.
Oh, it was a celebrity. I don't know if maybe you did something else.
I was probably for Wizard World because I used to have to cover a lot of the celebrities out there. But I did a lot of intern work and stuff like that back in New York City back in the day, like with for film stuff. So I worked behind the scenes, like with Tom Fontana and God, I'm aging myself
to say
here.
Harrison Ford for some reason.
No, it wasn't Harrison Ford. It was the show The Oz.
Okay.
And then I was in the casting agency with Kathy Bates back in the day. I think that was Beach Hill Films. I don't even know if that's still around anymore. I'm so out of that field now, so I don't know.
But it's cool. I wanted to bring that in.
I don't know.
I think it's cool that you kind of brought it up because you have lived a very eclectic life.
I've always been that person who's been eclectic and going from one thing to the other. I was more into the entertainment industry back than anything, but I left that scene pretty early on because, well, there was a lot of stuff that I saw I didn't like. But one of the other things is I didn't want to have to be one particular role. And I really wanted to do documentaries and photography. And then when I had moved back to Philly area, I was kind of put into video work, which was all for the medical field. And it's so freaking dry. I mean, it's so dry.
It's very boring.
And it just sucked away everything that was creative about me. And it just shut me down. So I did more agency work, and I hated that too. I hated always being the one who was told what to do. So I decided that was going to be, if I was going to create art, it was going to be for what I wanted to do. So that's when I became an independent photographer. And that even fell in my lap. That wasn't something, that I was going to say, I'm going to be a photographer. I mean, I did photography since I was 17, but to become a professional photographer was not in my at all. And it was because I was doing it for a friend of a friend for their wedding. So that blew up and then kind of went to, so I've always listened to my intuition with business. That's something I've always been really good at. And I think that's probably my first thing that I think that I did successfully with intuition was that, because I didn't have any attachment to it. I didn't.
Well, I didn't have any attachment. Good at that though. When it comes to business and money, you have zero attachments, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know why that is. I don't know. I think it's because I thought maybe because of the duality of being poor and rich, kind of that like, both living a double life and everything, because I find some of the things that I find are cozy or more in the poor realm because I don't have any of that responsibility. I'm like, well, I can't do that. So that feels good. But also, you can't be used,
Yes.
So
you and I both have that word.
Can't be used. So that's good. And then there's other times where I go, what do you mean I only have this much amount of money? I want to go here and that costs a lot of money. And I have this rich mentality, and it's like, what do you mean this doesn't work?
I swear to God,
why is this card?
I feel like you and I were kings and queens in one life, because
I'm pretty sure I was.
We do have some really expensive taste in what we want to do. Bougie.
We're bougie, but here's the thing. I'm not
a bougie in the traditional way, though.
No, I am not a, high designer kind of woman.
No, like I'm a bougie traveler.
You're a bougie traveler. We both kind of are, though. Yeah. I think we learned that really quickly when we were road tripping. We've talked about that enough with our ridiculous amount of baggage and bringing our own freaking like mixers and shit. This is how we travel. That's how we travel. But like, I was never the person, like the stuff that I was really rich on was the things and material items that lit me up and would light other people up. So I was always the one who liked the trendier things of like, that's different, or check that out. Artists. I was more of an artist than anything. So to bring that to light from my backstage to the front was huge. But I did the same thing as you did with the vlogging. I still have, I found videos of me talking to you before Marco Polo. because we used to have to do it through video just because we didn't have Mark, or that didn't exist back then.
Right.
So I have drop boxes of Johanna and I just chit chatting, but I still have video of me in the car getting to work to talking to you and bitching about stuff. And I laugh at it. It's like,
So funny.
oh, these
Yeah.
are so old.
Tanya's the one who introduced me to Marco Polo, and I freaking love it. And
It's great.
I try to get any of my friends who are not local to get on it, and people struggle with it. And I'm like my friend Julie, she struggles so bad with it. I'm like, I don't get it. Why are you struggling with this? This shit is the bomb. Like when she's actually with her, she has twins, so she's never has time to be on like, video chat with me. So I'm like, this is perfect. But she just can't get it.
Do you know why?
Why?
Accountability. Because when you are being recorded, you got to take accountability, because that feels permanent to a lot of people.
Yeah,
Even
that's
though
true.
it can be deleted and everything like that. And people have a lot of fears of accountability, because when you think about it, when you go in a conversation, you turn it off. It's kind of like a story, like on social media. But with Marco, the accountability is, someone can replay and listen to back to what you say. And that makes people nervous because they don't feel that confident about themselves.
Well, I also think for her, she wants to answer me as she can't hold the space. So she wants to answer it, and she has a hard time waiting till the end. And then she's like, oh shit, there was like 50. And we do this sometimes. Sometimes our Marcos get long, and we're like, we have to do this in sections and answer you in sections because we forget. So I think that's part of it too. But I never thought about the accountability part. That's a good one.
Yeah. The big thing is the long conversations.
Yeah.
Some things are just meant to go back and forth, but
Yeah. So I get it, but I absolutely love it. But my mom, on the other hand, I got my mom into Marco Polo. But the moment that she realized that everything she was saying was being recorded, when her and I got into it a couple beginning of this year, actually. Was it this year? Yeah, it was beginning of this year. She quit. She got off Marco Polo because she's like, and she was like, no more. Because like what you just said, I didn't even think about it. She knows that's forever recorded. And so I never thought of it that way until you said that. But
it's accountability, or even, when this happens in conversations too, when someone's like, I don't remember saying that. And there's honest times where you're like, I really don't remember doing that. Dude, I got called out in accountability too, on a part where I thought I was doing someone a favor, and they totally shot me in there and said, well, this is what it looked like. And I'm sitting there smiling going, fuck it. Yeah, fucking do that.
All right. Gotta look at that.
I was like, well, I gotta look at that. It looks like I gotta work on that, because subconscious, because your subconscious runs your mind. So we do a lot of things, or a lot of our actions are based upon our past. And I catch myself, well, I'm not perfect at it. I have a lot of stuff that's still 98% programmed in me. But especially when it comes to, working with individuals or getting in that fear base, and not expressing your feelings, which is silly because I can express my feelings with safe people. But here's the thing for me, Johanna, you've been the safest person for me for how many years? So when I open up new, getting closer to relationships with other people, it's a whole different ballpark, because now I got to be open again to, other people. And I have a small circle. I have a really, really small circle now.
Which happens when you go through this journey.
Yeah, it does. It does.
What most people don't understand is the opposite of dysregulation is self-expression. So, and I want to say that again, because I think a lot of people are going to have a little bit of a mic drop moment hearing that. The opposite of dysregulation is self-expression. So it's not that you don't get triggered. It's not that you don't have a response in your body, but when you can be in a trigger. And this is why our relationship, and this is another reason why I'm going to say this, our relationship, she has been my safe person. I've been her safe person. She could have other people. I don't know. But I'm saying, like, it's been very healing for both of us, because when you can be in the trigger and express your emotion and that you are triggered, you are actually in a regulated system. You're in the process of regulating your system. So it's when you're dysregulated and you shut down that now your dysregulation is running you. But if you can note it and be aware of your dysregulation and still be able to articulate what the fuck is happening, that is when you are in a space where you can regulate your nervous system. And that is so powerful for people to hear, because I think a lot of people, there's so many trauma coaches out there who don't know what, and no offense, like there's always points of time, and I don't know everything, but that basically teach you shouldn't have a trigger. That's not correct.
Mm-hmm.
It's that you can express that you are triggered.
Oh, and you helped me with that. I mean, that was just like last week when I had a complete panic attack. I was in trigger mode. When you have CPTSD, you have a tendency to, once you have the anxiety, it's there. So now you have to try to get yourself back down, right? But my big thing was, oh my gosh, I'm not be able to talk to anybody. I can't express how I feel and all this. And when I had told you that I, kind of vomited and told somebody my feelings about how I was feeling and how that triggered me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just feel like I word vomited on an individual. But I also felt when you said that, you're like, that's really healthy. Like that's healthy that you did that. I was like, oh, okay, I feel a little better.
Yeah.
It's like I wasn't like throwing it on there, but at the same time, I was also talking to a healthy individual
Yeah.
who was able to go, oh, I'm, to look at it that way. So, um, you know, relationships with people should be that energy of doing that, going back and forth on that. And I needed that reminder too, because like I said, I've only had a certain amount of individuals in my life, and to open that up again, or just to be open to stuff like that, is difficult sometimes when you get used to certain things.
Vulnerability is hard.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so refreshing too, because I know I spent a lot of years being fake as fuck because it was easier. Because if you're vulnerable, then people are, when you don't know how to see, when you can't see yourself, you won't be vulnerable and allow someone else to see you. You won't do it. So when we start to see ourselves, we start to be more comfortable being vulnerable and letting other people see us. But at the same time, there comes these core wounds of abandonment and rejection that surface. And then now we have to work through that fucking aspect of it too, because you can still be vulnerable and express yourself, but I know, at least for me, I still have those moments where I feel I don't fall into it all the time, but I still have those moments where the fear of abandonment or the fear of rejection comes up in that process. And then I have to walk through and feel that, and navigate that. So, what's the saying? I don't know who says it, but we're all just walking each other home. I mean, literally we are. We're literally all just being like, one fucking step at a time, dude. We're going to get there.
Well, I think that's why I liked playing video games so much, was changing characters. And then I could not have to, especially when it came to online gaming, it was so easy to have a conversation with somebody, because when you had enough, you just signed off and then you were somebody else again, right? Yeah. Whoever you can want to be. And the same thing with moving. I couldn't wait to leave New Jersey, to have a fresh new start with new people in New York who had no idea who I was. And then I became another version of me. And guess what? When I all of a sudden didn't feel comfortable in that version, I'm like, I have to go even further. And guess where I went? I went to Australia. I went another step further. That has always been my thing, where it's like, so I'm very cautious about when I move now or do stuff, and it's not because I don't think I can move or do that. I want to make sure that I am so integrated in myself and confident enough to go, I'm not running away. I'm not, leaving something because no, I can't face that. I can't take accountability for that. I'm going to run. And that's what I've been doing the majority of my life. Has been running. And that is a really hard pill to swallow. It is, and because
you're not the same version of you. Because when I met you, you were in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And I actually flew to New Jersey and saw you in New Jersey. And so being friends with you as you shifted from New Jersey to Michigan, you're a completely different person in Michigan than you were in New Jersey. Now, a lot of that has to do with your own self-growth and evolution. Yeah. But it also has to do with the environment that you are now in, the town that you're now in, the people that you have chosen to surround yourself with. Like all of those are factors. Yeah. And the new traumas and new experiences and new joys and new friendships, like all of those play a factor in it. All of them.
Yeah. And I used to find that when I had come up here, one of the biggest things that was hard for me to hear, especially from the people who were excited to see me, because I had left gaming a lot and there were gamers, was that they missed the old Tanya. And I was like, well, what about this version?
I know.
Like, she's just as cool. Yeah. I can still play video games. I'm just not, it's not my, everything. So I used to take that really hard.
Yeah.
And look at that differently. But, some people come and go in your life, and, if they can't evolve with you, then that's different. And there's some people who you stay in
Who
connection
accept
with
you.
who just accept you for who you are.
Yeah.
And, I have boatloads of those individuals who I don't have to talk to on an everyday basis, but I know that if the shit hit the fan and I called those individuals up,
Yeah.
they would 100%, be there for me
Yeah.
in that level. And that's a great feeling to have. And I have that worldwide. I don't have that just in one area. So I
Yeah.
did create really strong relationships with people who did know me, um, and would accept me if I changed.
Yeah. Well, and
So
we're all
that's cool.
supposed to change. We're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to change. We're not supposed to stay the same. And I know a lot of people who haven't changed. And it
Mm-hmm.
kind of makes me sad because they're not growing and
Yeah.
evolving. You know what I mean? And so it does make it hard. And when you outgrow somebody, a lot of times people try to hold on because at one point you were so close or you had such good times, but it's like you can't, you have to let go. And because I find that when you let go, it actually allows that other person to start to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of times when we hold on, we actually stunt someone else's growth.
Oh, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
And
Especially if there's a one version that you want, and you're like, oh, that's
right.
it's gonna be. And then it's like, it's not.
But that also comes back to bringing it back to our original topic, which is when we hold on to old versions of ourselves, we stunt our own growth as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so allowing those other aspects of us to integrate, or I like to say die or go home to the heart, is important. And a lot of times, one of the biggest awarenesses I've had this year alone is that a lot of times the stories that we have in our mind and the triggers that come up, the people that get called in, those aspects of ourselves, those versions of ourselves called that shit in to try to prove to this version of us that that story is still true. And because they're trying to stay alive, they have to keep themselves alive. That's all they're doing. They're trying to stay alive, but they're not meant to. We are meant to integrate and integrate those aspects of self. And so as we're going through, if we're holding on to those old stories and those old beliefs and those old versions, we stunt our current growth and we keep going like around and around and around. And that was a big awareness for me, especially in dating and relationships,
Mm.
because I've had the biggest mirrors when it comes to men and just in relationships in general. And I was like, oh my God, this keeps happening and this keeps happening. And I started really looking at it because that's what I do. I'm so self-aware that I know I'm in a subconscious, that my subconscious is ruling me, and I'll just watch it play out because I'm like, I got to learn something here. And so I'll watch it and I'll be like, oh, there it is. And that's what happened this year. And I was like, this part of me does not want to die because if it dies, then I'm going to die. It feels like it can't keep me safe. And so it
Mm-hmm.
has to keep recreating this story to keep itself alive. And I was like, yeah, I'm done with that. I'm not doing that. I'm doing
Yeah.
that anymore. And so a lot has shifted for me since I had that awareness, but we have to remember that, that we can't hold on to who we once were. And I had that come up when I moved back to California because I left 10 years ago and I was a fucking way different person 10 years ago. But at the core, I'm really not. My personality hasn't changed much. It's just my evolution has, my wisdom has, my growth has. So it's again, it's the same in both. Um, I want to say something because this keeps coming up. And her friend, Tanya's best friend, Tanya, talks to both
Mm.
of us. I remember the first time this happened, I kept hearing Tanya, and we had to figure out it wasn't her, it was her friend. Recently, her and I were talking, and Cyndi Lauper, Time After Time, started playing in my
Yeah.
head. And I don't always tell Tanya with songs, but I'm very clairaudient. And so Tanya's clairaudient too. And so we get a lot of music that comes to us. But whenever I feel the urge to tell her, there's usually a reason why. And so I was like, Time After Time just popped in my head and started playing. But this was the lyrics, and I can feel her here now. And I really feel called to read these lyrics because I was struggling to figure out what the message was, and there was multiple messages within it. There was multiple
Yeah.
meanings. But then Tanya sent me this Tanya, the one I'm talking to now, sent me another version with who? Who was in it?
Sarah McLachlan was singing
And
with Cyndi Lauper. It's one of my favorite duets. They
so
made it into a duet.
beautiful.
Yeah.
But the way that you had said to me, you said
Mhm.
it's like they're talking to each other, but do it as in you're talking to a different aspect of yourself or a different variant,
Right.
right? So I want you guys to listen to these words. If you're lost, you can look and you will find me time after time. I get chills just reading this. If you fall, I will catch you. I'll be waiting time after time. If you're lost, you can look and you will find me time after time. If you fall, I will catch you. I will be waiting time after time. And that was the part that kept playing. And I thought, this is me talking to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I'm getting emotional because it's like a full,
Yeah.
But this
It's you
morning,
talking to you.
I was thinking about that this morning and I was like, God, it's so beautiful that we can talk to ourselves and know that there's a version of us that is listening, that is waiting, that is trying to help us. And we can talk to them and they're talking to us. We just have to be silent enough and present enough to fucking hear them,
Mm-hmm.
to hear them
Yeah.
and feel connected to them. Because
Yeah.
when we feel lost or lonely, we're disconnected from ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
When you're lonely, that's what it is. You're disconnected from yourself because we have so many different versions of us surrounding us all the time that are with us all at the same time. That's what it is. When you're lonely, you're just disconnected. And so stop, reconnect. They're waiting for you. They're waiting for us. So it was me telling you that so that we could kind of put that all together because I
Mm-hmm.
think it was a message we both fucking needed. And
Oh, for sure.
it
For
gave us
sure.
different things at that time, but
Yeah.
it's so powerful. It's always mind blowing to me that it doesn't matter what I hear or what I channel or how much I grow and evolve. I'm so humbled every time by these little tiny things like this because you're just
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, it's
Yeah.
so massive and so simple at the same time.
Yeah. And you can just, when you connect the dots to something and really not just receive the message, but feel it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just shifts you in ways that you can never imagine. And
Right.
yeah, it was pretty cool. And I knew deep in my heart that was a dual message for both of us. I remember I was joking with you. I was like, no, that was for both of us. So we're
Yeah.
both going through
Because I
shifts. So
don't
like
even
I
know
know that.
what did I said to you? I said time after time popped in my head. And what did you say? That's my song from Tanya. Is that what you said?
I said that's my song from Tanya. It's usually when I am butting heads with other individuals that I feel like I have to either play small or I try to prove myself. But I also know that when I listen to music, I like to listen to versions of it. And when I had thought about it and I had sent it back to you with the duet version, I had said, well, I stated was, I think this is really just parts of you in this. And when you were feeling it, you really felt it.
Yeah.
But if you, and I do this a lot with music too. Like it's one thing to play a song back, but like if you listen to a love song, most of the time when you really feel it, that love song's for you. Like really listen to it and you'll see like, oh my gosh, this was really a love song for me. It has nothing to do with another individual.
Mm-hmm.
So music is so healing in there. And Tanya had a really beautiful way of always bringing music to the table or her favorite songs and stuff like that. But that song was always dear to me.
And then it was
So
very fitting actually for what you were going through at that moment, because
mhm.
that was when that whole thing went down
Yeah, it's
was you
when
had that
everything broke
person.
down and I had a complete panic attack that night. I was like, oh my gosh, I was feeling like I couldn't be myself kind of thing. And I had to play small and yeah. So, and these are things, and I always feel funny about bringing up how I process stuff. We all process very differently. Everybody does. But sometimes when we talk about the emotions or how big we are, we get embarrassed because we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I had like such a freak out and I couldn't sleep all night because I was thinking about something at work. And, nobody knows. And it could be the stupidest shit. But that is taking up your space. And it is important at that point to realize that. So, I give a lot of compassion for people who are able to talk about that. So why wouldn't I give that to myself,
Yeah.
be able to do the same thing? And it is a wake up call. I think we're constantly having that to look back into the mirror or just talk to ourselves or see ourselves. And, I think we're not perfect at it, but we try our best. And
Mm-hmm.
especially when we see it in other people.
Yeah. So what kind of advice would you give somebody who has never picked up their phone and recorded, looked at themselves and just vlogged or word vomited and then watched it back? Like, what advice would you give someone who's brand new, who's never done this, and who's listening to this and going, this is intriguing. How do I start?
So the first thing that I always say, because it's going to be funny, it's going to feel weird and unnatural for somebody to just go, okay, I'm recording myself and not talking, because what you're going to find is that you're not looking at yourself. Mm-hmm. And when you do look at yourself, you're going to get annoyed because your eyes are going to be like down here. So it's kind of like, I can't look at myself because because you look at the camera dot here. So you're looking at a camera. So what I always tell people is, you kind of have that phase, let your eyes go kind of unfocused a little bit so that you can now this is a really good trick and perspective too. And this is for mirror work too. Do not go straight close to the camera. Don't. Give yourself a little bit space, because what you do is when you create a 6-foot space, you are actually creating the imperfections not to be seen 100%. Okay. So you actually have a more positive look on you. So you don't have to be so up close to the camera. So my first thing I always tell people is bring the camera back a little bit when you're having the conversation, or sit it down somewhere. And then if you're walking around or you're just like doing it, do things that are natural for you, even if you're in the moment or if you're in the kitchen cooking, you're like, this shit, because this is the kind of stuff you would have a conversation with a person with. You'd be doing stuff, you'd be looking at it, and you would take the moment at one point to do it, but you're not going to sit there and stare at yourself 24/7. That's going to feel unnatural. So make it sound like you're a friend. But I always say step back a little bit when you do it. You don't have to be like
when I did Louise Hayes, when I started,
I know Louise Hayes, I know.
I was like this. I was like, look at that fucking wrinkle. That's all I could focus on. Look at that wrinkle.
Now I have done in my mirror class, I make people stick their forehead in front here and they're like laying on the mirror like this. I'm like, do you feel really, really weird? Is this up close and personal? But it's kind of a thing so that they can feel the trigger of it right in front of them. Yeah. And then they go, oh yeah, I gotta step, because you got to step back. You don't look at anybody that close unless you're maybe having sex with them. I don't know, but you're not going to be. You're not going to be like. You're not focused on anything. You're not focused on it, so you got to treat yourself like a friend. And so if that means being casual and being natural and not looking at yourself 24/7, then do that, and you'll find that you'll naturally will make eye contact in there, and you're not sitting there like frozen, because most people are. They're frozen in the beginning. And then sometimes they'll start doing something. I love watching it in my mirror class. People sometimes will be like, I don't know, like I had one person who was like doing their work and and they're having a conversation on their bed and they're crafting stuff and like that. But I was like, this is so chill. Like this is how she is. She's chill. This is how she's having conversation with herself. Right. And another person who's having a conversation and they're brisk walking and they're talking and and I'm like, holy shit, like what is going on? But this is how you have conversations with people. We're not always sitting here and doing stuff. And that's the part where it says, have fun with it, be light about it. Just
don't take it so serious.
Don't take it so seriously. And don't worry about what is said or not. And, oh my God, is this going to get out? Or is this in the cloud? And is so-and-so going to find this? You can create those safe spaces for you of how it's recorded and stuff. Yeah. So I say, step back a little bit and don't focus so much on seeing yourself and just allow it to naturally come out.
Because you're going to see yourself when you watch it back.
100%. You will.
I mean, most of the time when I'm recording myself, I'm driving. Most of the time when I'm talking to Tanya, I'm driving. Driving is my safe space. And when I first started, I would think about the person that I felt safest talking to. And I would act like I'm talking to them, even if I wasn't, I was talking to my own camera, but it helped because, and honestly, that's why Marco was such a game changer, because I am talking to you, but I'm really staring at myself as I'm talking. You know what I mean?
I feel like we should do a Marco spot. They should pay us. We endorse them so much.
I know that in Mudwater. I swear.
That in Mudwater.
I'm going to get Mudwater to sponsor my ass. But Marco, you definitely should be.
We should definitely be sponsored by Marco. Sponsoring us right now.
A little ad spot.
Give me some commission for that.
Right. But so, I mean, that's such great advice. And I honestly, and this is why I really wanted to bring you on and have this conversation, because I think we're in a time in the world where there's so much going on. There's so much, there's so many people who are in fear and don't feel safe to fucking be heard, to be seen. Like, we all have different beliefs. We all have different opinions on what's happening in the world and why it's happening. And And, some of us have the bigger picture in mind. Some of us are very narrow minded in that fear space. And none of those are right or wrong, you guys. But I feel like the more we can share ways to cultivate safety within ourselves and express ourselves, the more regulated we will be. Because again, when you're dysregulated, if you can express yourself, that is the point of you regulating. Like that is the regulation, your ability to express yourself. And if that means it starts with you, that's the most important, because again, everything outside of us is a mirror of us at some level, some way, that's mirroring back something to us. And if you're not willing to see yourself, if you're not willing to hear yourself, nobody else is going to either. They're going to misunderstand. They're not going to hear you. They're going to be closed off. And so it's such a good practice to try to start to create that safety and that ability and that space to see and hear yourself. And again, don't start with the heavy shit. Like start with lightheartedness. And then I always tell people, give it a day or two before you watch it back, and then laugh at yourself. I mean, it's weird. It's weird when you first start. It just is.
I mean, hell, I look back and it's at 2018 the other day. I wouldn't have even come up to that if I didn't know. And I was looking at it and was feeling like a lot more lighthearted. Yeah. You never know when that video is going to be so needed. Important. You might think it's the next day, but I think it's more than that. I think it's more than that. So you'll do yourself a favor of doing that.
Yeah. I get a kick out of watching my old lives from when I first brought spirituality into my business and really
I was there.
Because I was a business coach. I was a business coach, and then I went for multi-level marketing people. That's where I did my business coaching. And then I was like, it's time for me to bring spirituality and just go that direction. And I had to start showing up and doing lives and being more out there. And I'm watching those videos, they come up on memories, and I'm just like, oh my God, like this is wild. How I looked, how I spoke. And the funny thing is I'm really sharing the same fucking message. It's just evolved. The message is just evolved.
Just changed.
The way that I speak it, the terminology that I use, the comfortability that I have. And I've reached a level of, I just don't give a fuck anymore. Where back then I was very judgmental of myself, and you could see it. So I have a lot of compassion for her, but it's weird. You go from, you have the duality of it. You have the personal vlogs, and then I'm watching myself in the professional sense. It's a trip.
Yeah. I mean, you're really out there more than I am in that level. And not everybody has to be that, right? No. But that's just what you chose in that way. But you have those vlogs is what I'm getting at. You could literally answer one of your lives back if you wanted to. Like that would be cool. I'm going to challenge you to randomly pick a live, because I know during your lives, you were really good about asking a question out. I would love for you to answer that question to some of those questions that you have. And I think it would be really cool.
Yeah. I'll have to start paying attention to, like, because I don't always, sometimes I'll watch like a minute of it, but I haven't watched, because let's be honest, I'm a talker. So my lives are not really short, but I'll have to be more conscious of the next time one comes up and check it out. I can even go back on YouTube, but it's just I live a very public life, and that's not for everybody, but I've always felt called to live a very public life, and there's a reason for it. So it just is what it is. And, but it allows me to, I'm very humbled by myself a lot of the time. Let's just put it that way.
You have to be. I mean, if not, you'd be an asshole. I don't know.
I know. And there was a time where I was like, I was an asshole to myself, and I'm like, God damn it, Johanna, look at how fat you were, or look at this. What were you saying? And it's like, as I listen to myself, I'm like, that's not very nice. What are you doing? I'm not that way anymore, funny. But there was a time, I mean, I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't an asshole to myself. But we go through our phases, dude. We grow, it is what it is.
I know.
Oh my God. Well, I am so grateful that you came on. I know that this was, for my listeners, a little bit longer podcast, but it's so worth it. So thank you for sticking with us and listening. And if you feel called to follow Tanya or learn more about her, she's an amazing person. All her information will be in the podcast description below. Any final words?
I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be your first guest. That is quite the honor. It was quite the honor for it to be your guest. And I'm so happy for you. And I know it sounds Listen, I could say a lot to a lot of people, but I'm happy to be in Johanna's space right now. It's not about me. It's her space. She's running the show. And I feel really safe to be here because you know me, I'm a control freak.
Mm-hmm.
I could take things over, you know that.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like the need to do that here. And I'm like, this is nice. I like this.
Yeah.
I like this, Johanna. So
And
I'm excited for what's to come.
I love this. I've been talking about doing this for a long time.
Yes.
And I tried a couple of years ago and I got hung up on some stuff, but this has been the most, and I've recorded a ton of episodes, but this has been the most freeing thing I have done in a long time. And I'm really enjoying it. And I probably won't have a lot of guests, but, I'm going to be very selective about my guests. And
yeah, it's your show. You can do what you want.
Of course, you had to be the first guest because you're like one of the best. So who else would I do it with? It had to be you. It has to be you. All right, you guys. Thanks so much. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for listening. This episode was brought to you by johannaburkhart.com, where it's time to defy the limits of your mind and step into your multidimensional mastery. Don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. See you next time.